Hello, everyone, and welcome to Choose Change. My name is Melissa Arronte. I'm an employee experience solution principal at Medallia, and I'm so excited to talk to you today with my co-hosts, Dan Riley of Radical and Ian Cook from Visier. This is such an exciting time in our history where we have such an opportunity to change. And today we'd like to talk to you about what that means, what the opportunity is ahead of us, and some really practical tips about how we can move forward and choose change. So as we've all experienced, work has changed forever. This is a permanent change. And like I said, that we have such an opportunity. What we can see is happening now that there are going to be companies that are winners and companies that are losers coming out of all this change. The winners will be the companies that really make bold decisions and put people first. There's been some great recent research about bringing in organic feedback from employees, referred to as organic intelligence, to really change the way we work day to day with each other and with our customers. Such an opportunity for companies to move forward. But also in this time, we're going to have some companies who cling to the familiar or cling to their traditions. And those are going to be the losing companies who don't take this as an opportunity to change and boldly move forward. We're excited to talk to you about how we can move forward. And if we can look at the next slide, I'd like to just tell you for a moment about how we think about that at Medallia. We really call it activating the untapped power of your people to improve every area of your business. Employees come to work every day to have an impact, to make a difference. But unintentionally, we as employers put obstacles in their way in the processes and systems and guidelines that we create for them. And really in choosing change, it's all about empowering and enabling employees to tell us where are those obstacles and suggesting ideas about how to remove them, how to make things better, how to enable them to have the impact, to make the difference that they came to work to do. And on the next slide, we call that a continuous understanding approach. That's really the idea of bringing employee feedback and ideas together with signals. Signals from employees, really simple things that we can see in the employee environment every day to understand better the experience that they're going through without even having to ask them. If you think about something simple such as the team that an employee works on, are they working on a team with higher than average employee relations issues? Or a team that has higher than average recognition awards? Who is their manager? Is that manager new or very experienced? Is that manager a low performer or high performer? Those are some really simple examples of what signals are that we can use to learn about the employee's experience and what might be happening for them without even asking them. So what we have is a few different ways to look at the employee experience. There's the company view. And this is what we would argue is the familiar and the traditional. It's what we've all been doing for so long. And we've learned so much from, right? The traditional annual engagement survey. What a great tool to strategically understand what's happening across the enterprise and figure out where will we invest to make systemic changes. But this view is just a small portion of the universe of things that employees could be telling us about. Because in the company view, we really form the particular questions that we want employees to answer. But we'd love to challenge the idea that we can open up and allow employees to give their view, to organically tell us what they want us to hear about, moments that are really critical to them. For example, times when there's high turnover on their team, when their managers changed, when they've been transferred to a new department or a new location. Such critical moments in an employee's career and such a great opportunity to understand, connect with them, get feedback in that moment, and either help the employee through that moment or understand better how to help future employees going through that moment. And then the last area is really organic feedback, just empowering employees to provide feedback and ideas in the flow of their work. If you can imagine an employee completing a transaction with a customer and then just having the option to click a button and just saying how this could have gone better, how they could have been more empowered, how a policy or process could be simplified to make it easier for them to serve the customer. These are all really simple ways that we can begin to choose change and start making incremental changes with each employee to bring it together to really move us forward. So I'm going to hand it over so that we can hear from other companies on how Ian talks about this year. Thank you. Oh, Ian, we don't have the volume.
Sorry. It really is an exciting time, and important to understand just the world we were in pre-pandemic and all the events of 2020. We're not going back to it. The things that we're seeing and the things that we're Visier is excited and kind of focusing on choose change is this, what has been a slowly emerging practice around the use of all the insight and data you have in the core source systems being used to answer the questions that the business has. There's been a lot of confusion around what is people analytics. A lot of people think of it as simply as reporting, but really the purpose of analytics is understand what's happening with our people, looking at it through the sets of events, the changes in the data, the combinations of data like finance, like marketing results, like talent acquisition results, to understand the journey, to understand the how is this person's working situation affecting their work, affecting their team, affecting the results. And what we've done at Visier is look at this less of a technical problem and more as a business problem. So rather than having to stitch together lots of pieces of technology, hire lots of external people to build things for you, Visier puts all of those answers into a single piece of technology. We unite the people data, we understand how it works. We've built it out with literally hundreds of the Fortune 500 companies, understanding how that practice takes place, and we make it decision ready. So again, instead of having to invest all this time and effort on making things, the Visier technology brings it together, establishes the right way of answering the questions, includes a lot of education and insight around that, and then deploys that out. And we don't deploy out just to HR or just to the HR community. Our view is that we know from our own research that the power of this insight is elevated the more people consume it. It's a relatively simple equation. The more data you put together, the better you can answer business questions. The more people consume and use that to make decisions, the better decisions. The more better decisions you have, the better a business you have. So Visier's whole business has been built around this making it easy to access the answers, to see the truth in your data. And a lot of that is for us and for the customers that we've been working with, through the last 18 months and, for the 8 to 10 years prior to that, has really helped them make the changes that they need to make, either ahead of time or in a precise way in the populations that are most affected for the groups that where it most impacts. And the last piece, Visier is delivered as a SaaS service in the cloud. So we scale as you go. You can start with 5 users. And then as you go out to 5, 10, 20, 500, 1,000, as is the case for many of our customers, you're not having to rebuild, you're not having to recreate, you're not having to remake anything. You're just opening up access and continuing to establish it. So we think of Visier as the fundamental infrastructure upon which a people analytics practice is successfully built, combining the technical as well as that business expertise to make it fast, to make it easy, to make it successful. And we know again from a lot of the stories from our customers, it's a core component of driving change. And we're excited to be part of this community that's really looking to make the future after the pandemic much more people-centered, much more purpose-driven than it has been. And that leads me to hand to Dan to introduce Radical.
Great. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Melissa. So happy to be joined by 2 awesome human beings. So when we're talking about change, it's great to be surrounded by people who really believe in change as much as I do. So happy to be here. Radical, we believe in inspiring change. That is our purpose. That is our mission. Change doesn't happen if you don't want to change. It's a very simple formula. It's hard to do, but it has to start with a motivation. And that motivation has to come from a place where we see something better. We see something better for ourselves, for our organization, for our communities, for people around us, for the globe. So Radical, we inspire organizations to reimagine their people strategies by utilizing new science frameworks and technology designed for the changing world in which we live. So how do we do this? We can go to the next slide. We ultimately are challenging organizations to take a radical shift, to be radical with their people strategy, with their listening strategy, with their analytics strategy. The old world was, let's do an engagement survey, let's do a culture survey, let's do performance management on an annual basis, let's drop in a wellness app, and why don't we add some leadership development while we're at it? It's not enough, right? We need to build holistic strategies that meet employees where they are, the right place at the right time. And a lot of this is based on a whole person experience, right? And this is flipping the paradigm. This is really thinking about much broader elements of people, the physical, social, intellectual, spiritual well-being of people and what they bring to the organization. So this is, when we think about employee experience, we're raising the bar and talking about a whole person experience. People science with a purpose. People science of a whole person framework, includes legacy employee engagement and culture constructs, as well as new constructs, like I said, including physical, social, intellectual, well-being, and spiritual. But with a purpose, we're combining behavioral science of teams and leadership, and ultimately making the critical connections between people's work, life, and the organizational purpose. And finally, framework over platform. We believe in a decentralized framework approach, right? Built around well-designed whole person experience strategy. You're already doing this to some degree, using Zoom, using Slack, using Google Docs, and your technology framework around your people and experience should be designed in a similar way. So that is how we're promoting Choose Change. There's a lot of work ahead for all of us, but we are real excited with this messaging, and real excited to work with all of you to make a commitment to choose change. Because if we don't, and we've been saying this, all three of us on this call today, we're letting a good pandemic go to waste if we do not act and change. Work has changed forever, as Melissa and Ian both said, and it's our obligation to change with it. So with that, we can go to the next slide. So one thing we want to dig into here is that work has changed forever. And work is going through a seismic shift. So employee expectations of work have changed. There's traditional work models that are becoming obsolete, right? The myth that workers are less productive when remote work has been debunked. There's burnout and turnover is at an all-time high. We're in the midst of a work revolution. There is no return to work as we knew it or know it. So work has changed forever, and this means we need to evolve and we need to change with it. And Dan, there's an opportunity. Yeah.
I was thinking about that, like something I saw recently there's a meme going around on LinkedIn, and it's a picture of a cubby, like the classic office cubicle. And it's really, for me, epitomizing that, like, nobody wants to go back to the cubicle. So why are we thinking that work hasn't changed, that somehow we're all just shuffled back to those three walls of, whatever paperboard it is? I think it's a great image for that. Like, work has changed forever. This is not a human-centered space.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a great meme. So, with that, I want to turn it over to Ian and Melissa to talk a little bit about what we have here. When we think about change, we do need to focus on connecting people and purpose and rethinking productivity and engagement, addressing talent shortages and turnover, and creating community and belonging. So, Melissa, what are your thoughts on a few of these items?
Great, thank you, Dan. And I love how you talked about the whole person. So when we talk about Choose Change, these are some specific areas that we've hypothesized together are really the areas that require change. And in the next slides after this, we'll talk about some practical examples of how some of our really forward-thinking customers have put these to work. But thinking about connecting people and purpose, we're all reading the articles, right? They're saying that employees are leaving companies because it isn't just about working for a paycheck, right? Employees want so much more after we've gone through this of a job with meaning, a job that's fulfilling a purpose that is meaningful to them. And every job has that opportunity. It's just enabling and empowering people to have that purpose, to put themselves into the work. So it's not guidelines and policies that are so strict that we're scripted in what we say, that we have some flexibility about connecting with the customer. It's two humans interacting, and we want the ability to serve that customer in the way that we think is best for them with some guidelines, but not something so strict as to script us, right? And then the second idea, rethinking productivity and engagement, is really, again, looking at the day-to-day, what's happening for employees, where are they having an opportunity to put themselves into the work? You know, we hired these people for their intelligence, their skills, their competencies. You know, we need the opportunity to let them shine so that they can bring in their whole self to be engaged and productive at levels we never would have thought could be until we really empower them. Ian, would you like to comment on the next two?
Yeah, and I was going to just riff on something you're saying, Melissa. Like a lot of what's been striking me as we've had the choose change conversation is a lot of the policy and practice that is kind of currently in place, you know, comes from the 70s and 80s and the manufacturing world or even potentially the unionized world where we had to do everything the same. And yet the world of work, the people who are working, the way work has done has moved a long way away from that kind of work experience. So I think that's driving what we're seeing in terms of the talent shortages, the great resignation. Visier spotted it in from our benchmark data back in February, and we put out a paper with MZ saying, watch out, this is coming. So we're sort of a living example of where data helps your strategy get ahead. A lot of it is, some folks said, oh, I know, it's just people who are waiting. Our data says differently. It was people rethinking, you know, going back to that purpose and rethinking, what do I want to do for work? Where do I want to work? How do I want to work? And making those changes. So I think there's a lot of questions from the data and a lot of changes in terms of actually managing this talent shortage and the great resignation, just assuming it's a wave and it's all going to, you know, wash through and we'll go back to how things were, I think is going to be the pattern of the losers. The winners are going to, you know, focus on a lot of the elements that Radical and Medallia and Visier highlight. How do we build people-centric policy? How do we create a framework within which productivity happens? And how do we make that community, you know, the lift and access to insight about diversity, equity, and inclusion is massive. Again, a lot of the stories from our customers are how they're not making that another thing they do. They're making it how they do everything. So you build a community where we're all driving towards a sense of purpose. It's a very different, much more rewarding type of organization than mechanistic type of show up in the cubicle, do the job, clock out, go home. Like that world is nobody really wants to live in that world because life's too important, too meaningful. And I think that's a huge part of tapping into that as an employee through these types of activities really helps to build a change and build successful business. So yeah, let's go look at how we make that happen.
Great. I will just quickly kind of set some context here, but I love what you both just said. And I mean, one of the most important things is connecting people to purpose, right? If people show up for something greater than themselves, it's incredible, you know, how people can bring their best to work. They can be inspired to go above and beyond. So I love those statements. All right, the choose change framework. I'm going to quickly talk about this at a high level and then turn it over to Melissa and Ian. As I mentioned earlier, one of the most important things before we change is having a change mindset, right? Change isn't a decision. Change has to be a passionate set of small decisions repeated over and over again, right? And that takes courage, because to change, we have to let something go, right? We can't change and hold on to everything that we're carrying. We have to drop something. We have to leave something behind. That's change in its best form, and that takes courage. And in order to change in a courageous way and leave something behind, we need people around us to support us. So we need a connected culture, right? And that's why being connected is so, so important. You can't do it alone. We're not expected to do it alone. Change is not supposed to be done in a room by yourself. You're supposed to leverage people around you. We're human beings. We work best together. A sense of being humble through the change process is so critical. And that's because we don't always know what's around the corner. So a willingness to say, I don't know, but I know where we're trying to get to, and we're going to have to experiment together. Let's do this together, and be empathetic to different points of view. I can't stress this one enough. Change is about sharing different ideas and debating different ideas. There isn't one way to do it. And being transparent goes without saying. Be open, be honest, share what's on your mind, and be committed to the process. Change isn't going to happen overnight. It isn't going to happen in 3 nights. I use this example often. It's like a flower blooming. It takes a little bit of time just to see it bloom. If you stare at it, you're not going to see it. But if you walk out 3-4 days later, you're going to see a beautiful flower. Stay committed. So with this, we need to be inspired to want to change. And this is overcoming inertia with a change mindset. So that mindset is critical to the inspiration part of this model. So inspire your team, be inspired individually. This is critical to keep that momentum going over time. Preparation is absolutely fundamental to this, right? Once we agree, we know change is necessary for our organization. We've outlined why we want to change and what we want to look like post-change. And that's always evolving. Keep that in mind. But make sure you have the appropriate people processes in place. Make sure you have the appropriate technology processes in place. Make sure your people are prepared. It's change will always be a bumpy road. So that preparedness is such a critical part of the process. And with that, I'm going to hand it to Melissa to talk about really how do we activate change and start to make true change happen over time.
Great. Thank you, Dan. So last night I was speaking with a CHRO from an organization that clearly is going to turn out to be a winner, because what she wanted to talk to us about was not our annual engagement survey, which runs beautifully and has excellent analytics and is disseminated to the organization with action planning. That's all set for them. What she was really looking for is day-to-day engagement of all teams across the organization to be constantly solving employee and customer problems. And this is the CHRO saying that she doesn't need all the data coming into the center all the time. She needs every manager and every team working on day-to-day employee experience and customer experience problems, because they're inextricably linked. It was so great to hear her saying that, and so excited to partner with her on how we'll solve for that. And just a couple examples of some of our really progressive thinking customers and what they're doing. So one customer, it's actually the chief marketing officer who came to us originally talking about customer experience, and he runs a major chain of US restaurants. And what he said is, I need to put employees first. In order for me to excel at delighting our customers, I need employees to come first. How can you help me do that? So we're working with him on how we bring employee and customer feedback together in one place so that we can hear both sides of the story. He was trying to understand why customers were not buying a particular limited time offer, but they weren't buying it and there was no feedback about it from the customers. So he looked to his employee feedback, and there he could see employees explaining why customers are not buying it and suggestions of how to improve it so that they would buy it. Customers couldn't comment to him about a product they didn't buy, but employees could explain why they're not buying it and have great suggestions on how to improve it. So he needed the two pieces to bring it together. Another great example is a hospitality company, worldwide chain of hotels. And once every 2 years, they would hear from the housekeepers. That's how the housekeepers were able to give their feedback in a room with a translator. And you can imagine how hard it was to be able to provide feedback. And it was bottled up for 2 years to be able to provide that feedback. How many people had come and gone in that time? But now, by giving the housekeepers access to a simple app on their phone where they can use video to record their feedback in their native language, and then it's translated in real time into English so that executives and managers can immediately understand what is their feedback, what are their ideas, what an opportunity to give them purpose. They always had purpose in making things more comfortable and clean for customers, but now they can provide their ideas and feedback as soon as they have it in a way that's most comfortable for them. So such great examples of really empowering and enabling employees to create purpose, to bring their whole self to work, to have an impact.
That's fantastic, Melissa. I love those stories. I love the nature of the use of technology, the putting the person first. I think the alignments with marketing are very interesting in that nobody nowadays would think about running marketing without some kind of analytics. You know, you go back to I've heard it told a few times, so I won't take credit for it, but you go back to the sort of the days of the Mad Men stories, whereas, you know, an individual sitting in a room, apparently drinking whiskey, you know, coming up with crazy ideas. Like, it feels like that was HR's day. Not with the whiskey, but coming up with crazy ideas. And now we can do so much with data. We can get it fast. We can make it easy to access. We can distribute it. And that's where the Visier stories come in. You know, lots of organizations dealing with the radical shift, whether you call it a work quake, a great resignation, the great reset, you know, lots of different names for it, but people are choosing to work differently. And often the hard part with the analytics side of it isn't necessarily getting the data, it's that using the data to drive change. And a lot of our customers have been on this journey of, again, moving past DEI as a reporting initiative, or, you know, gender as something they must do, and actually looking at how does it affect our business. And so we know that a large number of women left the workforce over the pandemic for a bunch of unfortunate reasons. We know lots of people are struggling to get women back. We have, again, stories of customers who basically used their data to make a campaign with the executives to change policy, to change practices, to bring women back to work. And it's this steady element that Dan highlights around change. Like, here's our data, here's our data, here's our data. And over time, building up that picture is like, well, this isn't an idea, this isn't intuition. We are losing women from the workplace. There are a lot of women locally who could work with us. What if we made a shift that actually aligns to those people and what enables them to bring themselves to work? So, you know, simple things like just having the answers, having the conversation over time led to changes in the way that work gets done, the shift patterns that meant women could re-engage in work, opportunity in the local community. Like, there's so many win-wins, it becomes this really people-centric place. And all of that comes down to, you know, skilled individuals who can have the conversation, but the key is having the answers from the data, bringing the listening data, bringing in the event data, bringing it all together and saying, this is what's happening from our business. Here's our opportunity, here's our action, and continuing that cycle to listen and adapt as we go forward, driving genuine change that works for the business and for the community, which I think is what we all know is the future.
Excellent, Ian. I couldn't agree more. And like we've said, this is the moment that we're at such an inflection point. We have such an opportunity to choose change. And I hope we've inspired you to choose change with us. Across our 3 organizations, we have a wealth of knowledge of how to implement these practices, how to do them at scale, how to start with one particular business problem that we can bring together technology, data, employee emotions and empowerment and strategy to really solve for that problem, to make a difference in the bottom line of the business by choosing change and empowering employees to really have an impact. So I hope you'll reach out to us, connect with us on LinkedIn. We're all available. We'd love to talk with you. Thank you for your time today.
Thanks, everyone.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.